Bernadette Horn, one of our associate directors, will be the help of two of our former fellows, which we will introduce shortly. But I wanted to just say very, very briefly that, as you will hear, this is a very unique program. It is very competitive, and it will require you to produce a writing and have an interview, or try to have an interview. And that's a lot of work, particularly coming as it will after finals. But as you'll hear Bernadette and our former fellows, it is well worth it. It is, quite frankly, an opportunity that if you are successful in getting it, literally can change the course of your life. So I urge you to pay attention, to more importantly participate, not just pick up the packet, but to actually apply. And we look forward to seeing you through this. I'm a little bit disappointed in the turnout. So as you can see, we're taping it. And I would urge you to urge your friends and classmates who are not here. This will be on the web in a few days. Mm-hmm. Okay? And we list the links on the Career Center website. So I would urge you to have, as I said, your friends. Okay, Bernadette.
Hi, I'm Bernadette Horn from the Career Center, and I'm going to tell you about the Minority Student Fellowship Program, which is sponsored by the Association of the Bar of the City of New York. I'm just going to give you an overview, and then Jasenia Hernandez, who's a 2002 fellow, and Nima Ashok, who is a 2003 fellow, are going to talk to you about the experience that they had through the process and their summers at their firms. Jasenia was at Skadden, and Nima was at Mayor Brown, and we also have Saima Majid, who was at Watt. She's a 2003 fellow as well. Is anybody a 2007? 2007? No, we're all 2006. No. 2007? Are you planning to transfer to full time?
Probably.
Well, make that decision before you do this. You would have to have transferred by January in order to participate.
Early January.
Early January. Okay. Everybody else's class of 2006, full-time and part-time, right? Yes. Okay. The program basically places first-year minority students at large New York firms. It's unique because these firms typically don't hire first-year students. Forget the minority part. They just don't hire first-year students. And it's significant because you are hired and paid at the same rate as second-year students who are working there as summer associates at about $2,500 a week. Now you're all thinking, hey, this is great. What do I do to do this? It's basically a writing competition. And in the middle of December, there'll be a package available in the Career Center that will have the hypothetical fact pattern that the committee wants you to write on, and it also includes the cases that they want you to consider in your analysis. So there's no research involved. But now you're thinking, oh my God, middle of December, I'm in the exams, what am I going to do? You pick up the package in the middle of December, but it's not due back in our office until January 12th at 6 p.m., which means you can get some sleep, celebrate Christmas and New Year, sober up, and still have almost 2 weeks to write a 6-page memo, just a 6-page memo. So January 12th at 6 p.m., you're going to bring to our office your 6-page memo, a copy of your undergraduate transcript, a 1-page personal statement, and your resume by January 12th at 6 p.m. Write that down. No extensions. After that, the committee here at Brooklyn, the screening committee, which consists of Joe King, Professor Marumba, Professor Rosado, and myself, review all of the applications and determine which students will be brought in for a screening interview. Screening interviews are held here at the school, and then after that, we select 5 students who go before the full committee for further interviews, and then you're selected, we hope, for fellowship, and you're placed at firm. You're not going to want to do this because it's so soon after exams, but I strongly encourage you to do so. Yes, sir.
One person selected. One person selected.
We can recommend up to 5, and it's up to the committee. For the past 2 or 3 years, it's been 2 or 3. 2 or 3, actually.
It can theoretically be up to 5, but remember, all of the New York schools are participating. So it's a function of how many firms are participating.
Last year, we had approximately 50 students pick up the package and only 19 actually submitted it. So the good news is if the rate continues, you have a very good chance at it. So make sure you do it. I'm going to ask Jasenia to come up. She, as I said, as I mentioned, is a 2002 fellow. She's a part-time student, so obviously part-time students are just as eligible as full-time. And again, she was at Skadden for her, what would have been her second summer, would be your first summer. She went back for her third year, and now she's been offered a position post-grad. So, Jasenia Hernandez.
Hi. So I guess my job here is to convince all of you that you must apply for this program, and I cannot stress that enough. As you know, the firms that participate in this program are national and/or international corporate law firms, and typically those firms require their candidates for summer associate positions to be within the top 5 to top 10% of their class, be on law review or a journal, and many times MOOCOR as well. I know that all of you are first-year students, and I really hope that, as many of you fall under that category, but the math says that if this was the entire class of 2006, 90 to 95% of us would not fall in that category. And I know that myself, as well as many students, always complain about, why do these firms only make it a numbers game? Being in the top 5 to top 10 of your class doesn't necessarily mean that you're going to be a great lawyer. I might be in the top 20% of my class, 30% of my class, etc. And I'm really hardworking, I'm diligent, and I know that I could do a good job if I was just given the opportunity. However, these firms don't know you besides your numbers, and they use that as an indicator of whether or not they feel that you will be diligent, that you're smart, that you can understand the issues, and then you can write about them and all that. The beauty of this program is that it gives you that opportunity to get your foot in the door, where you probably would not have had the opportunity otherwise. I definitely would not have. I'm not in the top 5 or top 10% of my class. I'm not on our review. I'm not on the journal. I'm not on report. So that's like, that's all X's for me. If I was just coming in, regular admissions through OCI, they would see my resume, she sounds like a great girl, but she doesn't fall within our requirement. So because I participated in the program, I sent in my application, did all that, and was ultimately chosen as a fellow, I got to get my foot in the door during the summer of 2002. I spent my first summer at Skadden, and I showed them that even though my numbers weren't what they typically look for, I was an asset to their summer associate class and ultimately to their first year associate class of 2004, which I'll be joining in October of next year. When I was there, any opportunity is what you make of it. I knew that being there was an opportunity of a lifetime. Skadden is top 5 firm. In many corporate realms, it's #1. So I knew that when I was there, I wanted to show them that I was going to work as hard as possible. I never said no to an assignment. If I had to stay there till 2 o'clock in the morning, I did so. I really killed myself so that at the end, when the hiring committee, got together, they would say, this girl isn't the typical candidate, but, she showed us that she can work just as hard as anyone else and that we need her to be on our team. And I have been offered a full-time job. So, that's like, no way that would have happened without this program. That's a fact. There is no way that I could say I'm going to be joining Skadden Arps, upon graduation with my qualifications besides this program. So I really, really, really hope that all of you apply. It is so easy, honestly. It is not a difficult process. The memo is not hard to write. It takes you a couple days max, 1 page, personal statement, double space. It's not a lot of work, and it is the best investment in your career that you can make. It has been the best decision of my life to this point, and it really has changed the course of my life, as Joan said. So really, it's small effort for a big time payout. So I really hope that you tell your friends about this that are in your class, tell them how important it is, and I hope that all you guys submit your application on January 4th. Thank you.
So Jasenia did one summer there. her second year since she's a part-time student, and then was offered a third summer, and then postgraduate position, which is what you're all striving for. And now Nima is going to tell you about her application process and her summer at Maine Brown.
Hi, everybody. My name is Nima Ashok, and I spent my 2003 summer as a fellow at Mayor Brown. I guess I'd like to start out by echoing a lot of things that Jasenia said. I mean, this is the opportunity of a lifetime. I fall in probably a lot of the same categories as Jasenia. After finishing my first year, I wasn't in the top 5 to 10% of the class. I was on moot court, but not on a journal or law review. So I think this is totally a way to get your foot in the door. And to build on what Jasenia said, that's exactly what it is. Once you're in the door, you take that opportunity to make it the most that you can. You're on the same playing field as everybody else. Nobody's going to look back at your application and say, oh, in retrospect, maybe this person isn't what we want. If you come in there and you spend your 10 weeks in the summer just working hard and showing them how good you really can be, you've totally leveled the playing field, and you can make this, a lifetime choice for you. I guess I'll kind of take you through the application process from my point of view. After, I think my last final was on December 19th, and I felt like how all of you guys did, very exhausted. The first year of law school was tough, and I was ready for a vacation, big time. So I jumped on a plane, went to Europe, and I came back on January 6th because I knew I wanted to apply for this program. I picked up the packet beforehand, had a look at it, brought it to read on the plane, didn't exactly get there, but was back on January 6th, and had a week to really get into it. And the best part about it is that there's, the 6-page writing. I think the memo was 6 pages, and it's a closed universe. You don't have to do any research or anything like that. So it's just like a legal writing memo. So it's not very daunting. It sounds like a pain, but it's really not. It's actually, I found the topic to be a little bit easier than some of the legal writing ones that I had during the semester. To me, the topic also happened to be more interesting and more relevant because I think, like we said, these are mostly big law firms that participate. So the topic was on a commercial litigation matter. It was about an obstruction of justice case, like a federal statute. So it was pretty interesting. So I spent that week reading over I think there was 6 or 7 cases they give you, so it wasn't even an overwhelming amount of cases to read. Went through it, took my time to write it, and then just put the application together. They also need your undergraduate transcript, your law school grades, and a personal statement. For my personal statement, I basically used my personal statement from law school and just sort of tinkered with it a little bit because I think it can only be 1 page. And so that, even in and of itself, wasn't something that was really tough to do either. Another thing that I think you might have mentioned, Bernadette, also is that they say that you can include letters of recommendation. So that might be one thing that you might want to think about beforehand. Maybe contact the people that gave you recommendations for law school. I used my same the people that gave me recommendations for law school. I got one from a professor from my undergrad and one from a former employer. So I think that's sort of an important point. And I didn't do the application review, but I would imagine that I think I had some nice recommendations in there, so I think that might have helped, make my application stand out a little bit. So I would urge you guys to do that. That would be the only thing that needs a little bit of planning. And then basically you just turn it in and you wait to hear. The application process itself, like we've all been saying, is not that difficult. It's just like basically putting together what you might need to do for any job you're going to apply for after your first year and maybe even after your second year. What was sort of the tough part, I would say, is the interviews. A lot of people say that the interview process is actually even harder than it is for when you interview for a regular summer associate position at these firms. The people that do interview, once you get past the screening committee at Brooklyn and you go on to the selection committee, I guess it is, these are people that come and interview you. You get a person from a career services from one of the New York law schools, and then it's a panel interview, so there's 3 people that interview you together, and there's 2 people from various firms that are participating in the program. So you're going to get, if nothing else, even if you get to that second interview, it's going to be a really good practice for any interview you're going to go on in the rest of your law school career. Because I have to say, I worked for 2 years before I came to law school, and I've been on a lot of interviews, and I worked in the corporate world. But this was a tough interview. It was different. Law school interviews are when you're applying for a legal job, the whole caliber of the questions, the sort of things they ask you, it's different. So it's very good practice. If nothing else, if ultimately you don't get selected, it's a really good way to work out, you know, or to learn about how the whole system works. I remember they asked me some specific questions just about the essay that I wrote or the memo that I wrote. So we were asked to take the opposite position and just respond to it, which I think is very typical. A lot of times the jobs that you apply for are going to ask you for a writing sample, and they're going to ask you substantive questions on it. So that would be one thing to think about and be prepared to answer and do. Also, Joan and Bernadette get together with you beforehand and take you through the whole process and just sort of keep you, get you up to speed as to what to expect. They also asked me some relevant questions just about questions that were, or just issues that were happening at the time. I think right when I was interviewed was right when the University of Michigan case was up at the Supreme Court, so they were asking me all these questions about how I felt about the decision and, you know, what would I do, just sort of like relevant marketplace questions. So once I got all that and I got the great news that I was going to Mayor Brown, I was basically just treated as one of the summer associate class, which I think is pretty typical. I know Simon was the same thing with you. You're not really distinguished as, you know, the 1L minority fellow at all. I mean, you're just part of the class. It's not, nobody really knows until maybe, I know for my class, we had sort of a yearbook of all the summers, and they saw on mine that it said class of 2005 instead of class of 2004. And that was the only way that people sort of thought, oh, wait a minute, is she your first year? Otherwise, people didn't know at all. And you're not treated any differently. You get the same type of work, you get the same, you participate in all the same events, you get paid the same, most importantly, I guess. So, I mean, it was just an awesome experience. And another thing I'd like to stress is the fact that I think some people might get afraid that because maybe you didn't fit the numbers game, or because, you know, you are a 1L and everyone else is a 2L, that you're not going to be able to handle the work. But that's not an issue at all. I mean, what you learn your first year of law school is very relevant, but what you learn in the classroom is not going to translate to, you know, directly to what you're going to do in the workplace. I mean, they're going to, mostly what you do is common sense. I mean, they're not expecting you to read something and, you know, pull, you know, your cases out of like civil procedure to, you know, that you learn in class. It's not like that at all. It's, excuse me, it's, you're totally in a position to be able to do it effectively, to do all the work the same. And if anything, I know some of us have, you know, even stood out in some different areas based on whatever experience that we had in the past before we, you know, went on to do this fellowship. So, all in all, my experience was absolutely wonderful. Mayor Brown was a great firm. This was the first year they were participating in it, so I kind of had the advantage that they were very eager to get people on board because they started a new diversity committee and everything to sort of get involved in the whole diversity thing. And it was great because they, you know, they made sure that I was comfortable. They kind of, I had a couple of times just had people come up to me and just say, you know, is everything going well? Is there anything we need to improve? And, you know, and I got an offer to come back for next summer, which I've taken. I'm going to go back. And, you know, they're eager to get me involved in any sort of, you know, diversity committee issues and anything throughout the year, and also in recruiting, which is also a nice opportunity for me to be able to do during this year, to talk about my experience to other potential people that might even just go to that firm. In terms of the work I did, I think most of the summer associate programs end up doing a sort of a rotation, fairly informal rotation. We didn't have anything specific, like you had to go to all the different practice areas, but you got to like give them your preference, and then you moved around. So I spent some time in litigation. I spent 2 weeks in litigation, about 3 weeks in bankruptcy, and the remainder of the time in corporate, which was my choice. I haven't, that's what I wanted to do, and once I got into that division, that's where I decided I sort of wanted to be, so I ended up just staying. I worked hard, definitely, I'm not going to lie. I spent a lot of hours. I mean, that's the realities. I mean, they do concoct this little summer program for you, but they do want to show you what life as a first-year lawyer in a big firm is like, and we all know that, you know, you work a lot of hours. And you're part of a team when you're there, and you want to give them the best impression that you can give. You want to show them that you're eager, you want to show them that you're smart, you want to show them that you're willing to work hard, and you want to show them that you're just as good as everyone else, if not better, and they need you back. So I worked hard, but I have to say I didn't mind it at all. I loved it. I thought the work was really challenging. I was totally treated really well, given a lot of, you know, just treated like given a lot of compliments, just always commended for my work, always thanked for my hard efforts. And then there's the social part. So the work part was great, and the social part is great too. I mean, this is a big, rich law firm, and they spoil you. That's what they do. they take you to lunches all over the city every day. You get to interact with all the associates, with partners. They had planned social events, 3 times a week. They take you to baseball games and Broadway plays and all these parties and cooking nights, and I mean, we could go on and on. And they will tell you this at the beginning of the program, that part is just as important too, because, I mean, let's be honest, in a 12-week microcosm, they want to assess you as a person and as a social person, as well as, as well as your work product. So that was another important part of the program, I think. And I mean, all in all, in terms of the other summer associates, they were all wonderful to me too. I didn't really find that, from the firm's point of view, they didn't treat me differently, neither did the other summer associates. It was just, I mean, we all got along great. In fact, we all still keep in touch. A lot of them are in the New York area, and I think most of them are coming back, and we're all in touch, and it's been a great network. And for me, the great part is, and I know this would be true with Jasenia too, and Simon too, who's going back to Weil, when we go back as our second summer, and then when we hopefully go back as first-year associates, we'll have 2 networks of summer classes. We'll know people in our real summer class, and we'll know people in our summer fellow class. So just having that network of people to call upon, because when you start new, you're going to have all the people that you summered with your first summer, they're already working, you've already been there for a year, and you can always call them up with, your little, whatever advice you need or whatever help you need or anything like that. So in that way, I think people struggle with, once they finish the summer and they do get the offer, whether they go back to that same firm or not, but you just have to keep in mind that your opportunities are limitless. And then just to conclude, sorry I'm being long-winded here, but in terms of the whole thing we said about how you're getting your foot in the door, one of the great parts about the program is that once you've gotten your foot in the door and you are a summer associate at a big firm, regardless of what your numbers are, I encourage all of you to, regardless, just to submit your resume to OCI, because you'll get interviews for those firms that might not have necessarily, you might not have fit their number game, but once you're a summer associate, they almost don't care anymore. So I got interviews with a lot of firms that I wouldn't have gotten if I just went straight through OCI. I ended up deciding to go back to Mayer Brown anyway, but the point is that your opportunities are expanded even more. So in that respect also, if you do decide you don't want to go back to that same firm. So anyway, it's not that tough. Like we said, I think Jasenia made that point. Well, it's not that hard to apply. I encourage all of you to do it. You can totally enjoy your winter break and still have plenty of time to put the application together. And again, it's the best thing I ever did to this point. It's the best decision I've ever made. So I encourage you all. And if you have any questions, if you just see me around and you want to add, just feel free to talk to me. Thanks.
Thanks, Nikki. Simon, did you want to add anything?
No, I think we were covered. Okay, if anyone has any questions.
Yes.
I actually just wanted to add something about the point that was made that they have really no idea whatsoever that you're not a regular 2L. I actually just went to a recruiting dinner 3 weeks ago, and I saw a lot of the people that were in my first year summer who are now first year associates, and they were all like, Jasenia, where are you? Are you clerking? Or, why haven't you started working yet? And I had to tell them, remember, it was my 1L summer, I was in a program, all this stuff. So even 2 years later, they had no idea, that I wasn't in, because it's not like they bring you out the first day of orientation and say, these are our 2, City Bar Association, fellows or whatever. None of the partners knew, none of the associates knew. Basically, only the legal hiring department knew, which was 5 people. Besides that, no one had any idea. So if that's anyone's concern, that you'll be treated differently or anything like that, they really have no idea. So
I would like to comment on that for a moment. It's true, but think about it for a moment. What if they did know you were a City Bar fellow? That's a very prestigious thing to do. That's something that's going to be on your resume, and it's certainly nothing to be concerned about. So it is something that you should be proud of and feel, and something that you will carry with you for your entire career. Not just that you worked at Skadden or Weil or Mayer Brown in the summer in your first year, but that you were a City Bar fellow. Because to get to that point, you have to pass through a lot of hurdles. So it's something you should be very proud of.
So the main thing we want you to take away from this is that you should do pick up the package in the middle of December, in the middle of the craziness of exams, and then put it aside until January 2nd or 3rd, however long it takes you to sober up, and then get to work on it and get it into us by the 12th. Did anybody else have any other questions? Yes?
How do they determine what firm you're placed at?
It's a lottery. They basically put your names in a hat and the firm names in another hat and draw them out. Anybody else?
Yeah.
Yes.
What are you guys looking for in terms of sending us forward onto the next round? I'm assuming you're not going to use all 5 slots, or if you are using, assuming more than 5 people apply.
First and foremost, your writing, because that's what you're going to spend your summer doing. So we have to make sure that when we send you forward, you have the skills that the firms need. Otherwise, more and more of them drop out of the program. So first and foremost, your writing.
Yes. Also, that's a mandate that has been given to the law school screening committees to look very closely at the writing. That would include both the memoranda as well as your personal statement. So you need to pay a lot of attention to the writing. Leaving it to the last minute where you're going to make typographical errors, where you're going to make grammatical errors because it happens, is not a good idea. You won't get past the Brooklyn Law School Screening Committee if your writing is not, I was going to say perfect, but I'll stop myself. Also, you'll get a letter from us, by the way, and outlining all of this. You cannot get any assistance with this, either with the memorandum or with your personal statement. That has to be your work. Oh, another thing I wanted to say while I was listening. If you're intending to compete, I would advise you to get your undergraduate transcript as soon as possible, because it takes a long time. And your application, we will consider your application, but the full committee will not without that. So, it only is a couple of dollars. It's worth getting, even if ultimately for some reason you decide not to compete, but you will have it, and it's very important. Yeah.
Do you also look at grad school application and transfer student?
That would be a good idea. Yeah. Yes.
Should we send them to you?
You can send it directly to us, yes. And they'll send it to us in a sealed envelope and we'll keep it on file.
Yes.
I guess beyond the writing, what does the New York Bar Association
Precisely writing. How well you do in the interviews. Key.
It's not something you can quantify, It's, as Bernadette said, it's a lot of things. It's the package that you present. These firms, and I think Nima alluded to it, these firms also look at you as social beings, as people down the road who may be partners. Believe it or not, they think in this way. But, and also, am I going to want to work with you till 3 in the morning for 2 weeks in a row? That's very important. Fit and the kind of, right? She's nodding. And you will work until 3 in the morning for 2 weeks in a row. That I can tell you at firms like this. But all of that, so it's hard to quantify that, and how you present all that in the interview, both at the Brooklyn Law School level and then ultimately on the final level, is very important. A word also about the personal statement. Do you have any thoughts on that? Yeah. They vary.
I've seen ones where people sort of go through the why I came to law school or why I wanted to come to law school, and others where you talk about your personal background, whether your parents are immigrants or what you went through in order, or why you're here in law school. And I think they're all very effective. I wouldn't recommend one over another. So I don't really.
I would agree with that. A good starting place, as Jasenia said, is your the essay you wrote to get into law school. Certainly go back to that, take a look at that. Of course, you may have changed dramatically since you wrote that, so be careful. It's kind of like what defines you. And Bernadette's right. I mean, some people write about their personal background and experiences because that defines them. Others will write about why they came to law school because being a lawyer defines them. So it really is your defining moment that you put on paper. But also bear in mind, it's a writing exam, as well as the memorandum is a writing exam.
And don't think it's just a throwaway document. You may get questions about something that you wrote in your personal statement as well.
And it's a way to interest the committees in you. And so you want to give some thought to that. You wanted to ask.
Oh, well, I was just remembering, the process, the whole application process. And something else I remembered that was important both for the Brooklyn Law School screening as well as the committee screening is having some sort of idea of what it is that you want to do. I mean, these are corporate firms, so if you go in there and say, I want to work for the criminal division of the Legal Aid Society, I mean, clearly those two things don't match. It's not that you have to know, I want to work on, structured finance deals in Pakistan or something. Like, it doesn't have to be that specific, but at least if you have some understanding, I want to do corporate, generally, maybe, bankruptcy perhaps, like in a general fashion or something, just have some sort of idea of what at least you're interested in at this point, and to have that be compatible with the firms that are participating in the program. Something else that came up in both interviews, and I think is important to at least think about before you go in there.
That's a very good point. You could also be interested in litigation. When Yesenia said these are corporate firms, that doesn't mean they only do corporate work. That's often misunderstood. It means that by and large their client base is institutional as opposed to personal, although many of them have wealthy personal clients as well, but largely institutional. It's very big. The deals are big. The litigations are big. And really the key is that if you want to work for legal aid, that is not going to be a fit. But otherwise, you do everything else in these firms that you would do in a smaller firm. What's it say in the DA's office? Do you want to comment on that from an interview perspective?
Right. One of the things that they definitely questioned me on was I worked at the district attorney's office for 2.5 years prior to coming to law school. So they did ask me why I'm shifting and what my goals for the future would be.
You want to finish that thought? I'm waiting.
No, I mean, we discussed it. I just told them that I would prefer going to a strong litigation firm, but I also had my experience at the DA's office, and I feel that having that experience, I was ready to move on to something different. I thought this would be a good opportunity to be able to participate in a different range of law.
And she obviously convinced them. You might want to, in a spare moment or two, get on the website of some of these firms. Just take a look, see what they do, get a sense of what they are. It's helpful. It will be helpful to you even at the Brooklyn Law School level screening interview. If you, have a sense of what they do, what they look for, all of that is all on their website.
Where do we pick up the packet?
In our office, probably around the middle of December. We'll probably email you when we have a definite date, because we have to wait to get the packages from the committee and then make copies for you then.
This is just kind of a logistical question, but the personal statement is 1 page.
Yes.
Is that double-spaced or?
I believe it is double-spaced.
Actually,
I don't
you've
remember.
seen everything. You've seen half a space. Don't overcrowd it. As lawyers, you will learn that what you have to do is be concise. So this is certainly a way to start. But yes, it does have to be 1 page. We've seen it without margins. We've seen a lot of things. But the better it looks and the more you go over it so that you can get it down to manageable size. But I don't think it has to look up the space.
I think they tell you. I think they give the packet if they don't specify it, because they specify for the memo.
I think the memo is
Yeah.
double spaced for sure. Yeah. Yes.
How much weight is placed on the undergraduate transcript?
we give them, we ask you for them because the committee asked us to provide them.
Exactly.
So, not much.
However, something that shocked me at my second interview with the bar committee selection, they actually asked me about some of my classes that I took in undergrad. I graduated from NYU in 2000. This was 2002 at that point, so it was a little hard to remember classes that I took in 1996 as a freshman, and I didn't even think to look over my transcript and just remember what I took. I mean, there was one of the people on the committee happened to have gone to NYU or taught at NYU or something, and they knew a professor and the name stood out, and they started asking me about the class, and I think obviously I came up with something that was coherent and, was okay, but it was something that I was really taken aback by it, because when I saw them pull out the NYU transcript, I thought, I don't even remember what's on there, except for like my senior year, because that was like the most recent. So I think it's just important to, at some point, just look through everything that you handed in and be able to speak about it, even if you think it might never come up, because the strangest things come up in interviews, and you just never know.
Point. You want to work in our office for interviews? No, but seriously, we recommend anything, as Jasenia just said, that you hand in, the resume, the writing sample, everything, the personal statement, you have to know, because you're going to be asked about it. That includes your law school transcript as well as your undergrad. I wouldn't have thought of that, but that's a good rule of thumb when you hand things in.
Actually, I'd like to build on that too. I remember in my screening, I also graduated at NYU 2000. That's funny.
Oh,
but the same thing happened to me on my interview. They didn't ask me about my undergraduate transcript, but I had on my resume, I had like my activities at NYU, which I know what they were, but I was a student orientation leader, I think, 1 year, for a couple of years. I was in the business school, and I worked helping like the freshman students come, and I had that on there. I've had it on there forever, and I know about it. But I had 2 years of work experience before I even started. They didn't ask me one question on my work experience. I don't know if I told you guys this, but they didn't ask me anything about my work, and I worked in another country. I worked in Australia for 2 years. They didn't ask me one question about that, but they went through everything from my undergraduate activities, and I had to be prepared to answer those questions. And at first I was taken aback. I knew what they were. I didn't make them up or anything, but it wasn't what I was expecting to talk about at all. So just like Jasenia and Joan both emphasized, make sure that you're comfortable to talk about everything that's on your resume. And I mean everything. They pick the most obscure thing and ask you a question about it for 20 minutes, So just be prepared to answer any random question you might get.
Oh, not to keep adding things, but I'm just remembering the things as we go along. Always be mindful in your answers of who's in the room with you, because in my interview, there was someone from the Career Center at St. John's Law School. And one of the questions that I was asked was, I'm a part-time student, so they wanted to know why I was a part-time student. And then they asked which schools I applied to. I didn't apply to St. John's. So the woman from the Career Center, I think she was sort of joking, but sort of not joking. She was just like, well, why didn't you apply to St. John's? Something sort of like with a little tinge of an attitude. And, I was able to come up with something right away. And I told her that I live in Upper Manhattan, which is very far from wherever St. John's, I know it's in Queens somewhere, and I was also working on in Park Avenue, so it was just going to be too much for me to do, and that was a satisfactory answer for her, and luckily, just came out right away as soon as she said it, so it didn't sound like I made it up or anything. I think that was part of the reason why I didn't apply there, but, it's just like, you just have to be mindful of everything that you say. Try not to, insult anyone or anything like that, because it's just strange sometimes when people, don't take too well or whatever. So something else to remember.
More good advice.
Exactly. Don't be negative. If
Yeah.
you hate bankruptcy,
Yeah, don't be negative.
Don't say you hate bankruptcy, just because you never know the partner who you're speaking to works in bankruptcy, his wife, his son, somebody's in bankruptcy. Just focus on the positive. These are the things that I would like to do, and leave it at that. Yes.
Is it also by lottery, or is it up to the firm as to what area you end up being placed in at the firm?
It depends on the firm. Some of the firms have a rotation where you work in each department for a while. I think Nima said that her firm allowed her to choose the departments that she would rotate through. So it's going to depend on the firm.
Yes. How much weight do they put on the law school transcript?
It depends. Sometimes we don't even have your law school transcript by the time we start our review.
But we do
Some
have
of this-
most of it by the time.
We will have most, yes, by the time we're considering it, but when we start, we don't have it. Some of the schools don't provide law school transcripts to the committee, so it really depends.
It'll be out though by the time you go and sit with the,
By February, when you
by
you're
the, with the
selected.
city bar.
Yes.
When does it generally come out?
It varies year to year, but sometime in January.
I would urge you not to self-censor yourselves. You know, maybe not doing as well as you would have liked in your first year, and you see that coming down. Don't make the decision for yourselves, oh, I'm not going to apply because this is not going to be good. Don't do that. You really need to take a shot at this.
Do they look for anything specific, like in your resume, or do they place more weight on certain things over other things?
I have no idea. We've had people who come straight from undergraduate school, selected as fellows, and then we have Nima who worked for 2 years, and Saima who worked for 2 years as well, so no clue. Yes? You have to-
Oh, recommendations aren't mandatory, but you would recommend them?
If they're good, if they're really good.
One or two, is one sufficient, or?
Doesn't matter. They gotta knock the interviewer's socks off. If it's just, sort of what I call lukewarm, it could be more harmful than helpful.
Yes.
So when would we find out after the final screening process?
Last year it was toward the end of February,
I believe,
and I would assume that it'll be the same schedule.
Which will give you plenty of time, if you do not get it, to think about other options for the summer. And actually, you should be thinking about other options for the summer during the process.
Yeah.
Because you need to keep your options open.
And they asked me about that too.
Yeah, I was going to say that.
That was the last question in the interview. If you don't get this,
Oh, yes, they.
what else,
Yes.
are you, doing for
Yeah.
the summer? So
They asked me the same thing, so we should at least.
Here's where you have to be a little careful. Because if you don't get this, what are you going to do? I'm going to work for the criminal division of legal aid may not be the best answer. Because they may see this then, would I be right there, in that you're just doing this for the money, for one summer, whatever, and that may not go so well. So, you're not going to be looking at other options that are just like this, but, we can help you. Remember, we're not going anywhere. We're here, the Career Center is here. We're going to help you get through this process. The only thing we cannot do is assist you with your writing samples or your personal statements, and neither can your professors.
Yes.
Can your resume be longer than the standard one page?
If your experience warrants it, yes. I wouldn't have 2 pages of internships that are not relevant or school activities, but yes, it can be. That's it. So you're all going to come and pick up the package and actually do it, right?
Right.
Thank you.